The pandemic-related adjustments in the schools in the summer provided us a good opportunity to examine again between teaching and learning in different circumstances. And so in this panel discussion, we will follow the NFLC guided rules. We will compare the impact or influence we have learned from experiences between face-to-face and remote classes. Our panel will spend most of the time on specific topics for our discussion. And in responding to each prompt, what we are going to do is we're going to provide different perspectives based on your individual needs and provide all these facts for the teachers and other students to be an information to prepare us for the possible challenge in the future. And so today we will touch base with three categories like we talked before: instruction, which is the teacher input part, and the assessments, which is the student output part, and feedbacks. If we still have time left, hopefully, we can conduct a general discussion at the end. Okay, so now would you please, starting from Layla, see, I just call your name, but Layla, would you please tell us your name, first name only, the language or the language you are learning right now?
Okay. Hi, I'm Layla, and I am learning Spanish right now.
Q.
Oh, Q, Spencer.
Hi, I'm Spencer, and I'm learning Spanish right now. Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm learning German right now. Maxim?
Hi, my name is Maxime, and I'm learning Chinese right now.
你好, Maxine.
你好, 老师.
Okay.
老师好.
你好. All right, the first question is going to be about instruction. So did you receive shorter or longer instruction time from remote class? How much did it happen to your language class only? All right, so Layla, did you receive longer or shorter? How much did it only happen to your language class?
So I kind of received for like all my classes a really short amount of like advice and how to work with my classes, but I definitely think like out of all my classes, my language class was the one that really helped me because of course it's like a new class and it's a new type of, it's obviously a new language. So I think I got a lot of help from my teacher for it. So it was really like beneficial. Oh, Spencer, sorry.
You're fine. For my language class this year, it was somewhat different from the classroom environment because our teacher actually sent us YouTube videos to look at where she went through the lesson and the unit and the breakdown and what was due this day and when projects were due. For my other classes, it was somewhat similar, except they kind of just like wanted us to dive in. There was no instruction. We were just left like in the woods for wolves to come eat us. So it was really difficult. Rachel?
So for my instruction, I actually had like blocks of time that I was supposed to spend on classwork. So they said you should only be spending 3 to 4 hours a week on every class. And so that was uniform for all the language classes at my school. But for actually interacting with my teacher, I interacted with my language teacher more, but it was only like it was considerably less than when I saw her on a day-to-day basis at school. So, Maxine.
Yeah. Like Rachel, before the pandemic, we had about 3 hours and 45 minutes. So on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of language class. But with the pandemic, we only have about 90 minutes blocked for the whole week with about, I think, an hour of office hours throughout and every day, about like right before lunch. But as far as language class, we consistently had full 90 minutes every week. Yeah, but once a week.
But once a week.
Oh, shorter,
so,
definitely shorter.
Shorter. So in general, all of you receive shorter instruction time. So did you work less because of you received shorter instruction time? Did you work less? Did you work more? Think about, compare. So let's start with Spencer this time.
For my language class, generally I did work shorter because everything was there and it was simple. But other classes, because I was trying to figure out what I was trying to do for the assignment, I did have to sort of relegate more amounts of time. Rachel?
I actually think I worked about the same amount. This year I was preparing to take an AP exam, and so I wanted to make sure that I could perform to my best like capabilities on that exam. So I still put in the same amount of effort, and I still did all of my work in the class. But like Spencer, that was not exactly translated in lots of my other classes. Like I did have to put in a lot more effort because I wasn't really guided in what I was doing, or I had to teach myself. Maxine.
Yeah, so for the time, because we had so much shorter time in class, outside of class, I think the time spent on learning language is actually a bit more than outside when we didn't have the pandemic. But however, because we had so much less in class time, then the overall time was definitely less. So the overall interaction with the language was significantly less. And even though there's a bit more outside, it didn't compensate for the loss of time inside. Layla?
Yeah, so like just Maxime said, it's like the amount of time that I got in class was like didn't compare to the amount of time that we got during the pandemic. But I definitely think I got more like work, but it was like Spencer said, it was way more simple. So it was kind of easier to do and finish. But again, I didn't get a lot of interaction with the language itself.
So we have the change of time. So in your opinion, because the change of instruction time and the out of class time, should teachers adjust the achievement goal for your language class? Were you required to meet the same level, same standard like a face-to-face class, or because now we have a difference in the instruction time and a different type of instruction style we receive? So should we adjust the goal for your class achievement? So let's start with Rachel this time.
For me specifically, just because of the course that I was in, I was expected to still perform at a certain level because it was a college level class, and that's just what the expectations were from day one. I think that where I'm from, the classes are done in levels. I think this is really similar across the United States. So one year you're in level 1, next year you're in level 2. I think if we want to keep up with that standard, then we do have to set some sort of expectation or like goals for students to be able to hit in a certain amount of time of learning a language. But I do think it's really important for teachers and students to understand that with these like changed learning environments, whether it's fully remote or like a blend of face-to-face and partially remote, that you're not going to be able to learn in the same way. So maybe those achievement goals will have to be slightly altered, or you're going to have to go about like reaching them differently, that it can't be exactly the same as what it would have been if you were interacting with your teacher and other students every single day of the week. Maxine?
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with Rachel. So but at least for Chinese, I don't know about other languages, but for Chinese, I think the goal, the achievement, overall achievement goal can like the end goal can be the same, but I think the in-class time that the students have with since it's so much less, the in-class time that the teacher and the students have, it needs to be more like sort of optimized for activities that only the teacher is required for. So like speaking or even like listening to the teacher or doing something, but like things like vocab or studying vocab or grammar structures or like all of those things that don't require the teacher, I think they should be really put off to outside of the classroom. And so that inside the classroom, you can do things, you can leverage the teacher as much as you can. Lila.
For me, I definitely think like vocab was the hardest for me to like get on top of. So I think it needs to really be, like Maxime said, it needs to be regulated, it needs to be like outside time, but we need to make it more, how do I say this? Like pushed onto the kids. Like they need to do it more because especially with me, it helps me more, the vocab. And I think things like that are what need to be like more broadcasted to the students. Spencer?
In my school, it's somewhat different because every teacher teaches their kids a certain way. So for my class, I had all of my work done. It was expected to be done by the end of the month. Whereas other classes, they had to turn in their work by 2:30 at the end of the day, or else they got a 0 in the grade book. And with like vocabulary and other things like that, other teachers were more strict. So there was a lot of pressure on their students. And then we got a lot of sort of not hate, but there was a lot of disapproval towards the county and like the board of teachers, because there just wasn't communication between the students and like their areas where they live, because they didn't have access to like certain things, so they couldn't get their assignments due or turned in on time.
Mhm. Okay, so in this case, let's talk a little bit deeper. So what are the things, what kind of instruction? Now we think about it, that our face-to-face class can provide, but the remote class cannot. Face-to-face can provide, but remote class cannot. What kind of instruction from your experiences? Let's start with Maxine this time.
Yeah, well, I think instruction, as far as from the teacher, well, let me get back to teacher, but for classroom activities, I think working with groups, like with peers, although like we had some Zoom calls and we tried out the, what's it called, breakout rooms. When we break out the rooms, especially when the teacher wasn't there, I think there wasn't really much language practice happening. So I think really participating with the classmates is something that really suffers from this pandemic. Yeah, I guess I'll let the teacher to Lila.
Yeah, I agree with Maxime. I think participation definitely was one of the main issues during the pandemic. Like during class, you get to talk and the language keeps fresh in your brain. But especially for those who don't have, like Spanish speakers or Mandarin speakers in their home, it's hard to keep it like fresh in your brain. So I definitely think like breakout rooms or just Zoom calls didn't help perfectly. So I think that needs to, be better. So Spencer?
Similar to Layla, I found it very helpful to talk to my teacher in class, because I was able to use like sentence structure and vocabulary when talking to her. But when I'm at home by myself, there aren't people that I can talk to in Spanish because they don't understand it. Rachel?
I completely agree with what everyone's saying. Group work and just hearing people who are learning the language with you is something that's really beneficial for language learners. Like, I didn't really realize so much beforehand, like how much I can benefit from my classmates, but their questions and like the way they speak. And I have people in my class who speak other languages, and they're constantly pulling in from that to help us, move forward in our understanding of German. And that was something that I did really miss. And then also, cultural immersion is something that I think that you can't get outside the classroom, like when you're in your house. Like Layla was saying, how if you don't have a language speaker in your house, it makes it kind of difficult to like be refreshed by it. But I know that my teacher, she really worked hard at trying to. She taught us like formal German, we call it Hochdeutsch, but she also wanted to make sure that we knew like what she knew from being a German, like a native German. So where she was from, like up north, she would teach us those like part of those dialects and foods and like all that kind of thing. We wouldn't get exposure to that outside of the classroom. So yeah.
Great. So we kind of talk about longer or shorter time. So that's like the quantity of our instruction time. So my next one is, can you think about, is there any difference in the quality of instruction you received in remote class, of course, in compared to the face-to-face? Is there any difference in the quality that you receive from remote class instruction? Let's start with Leila this time. Leila?
Hear me?
No, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I heard nothing of what you said. My thing just dropped out.
Aha. So maybe Spencer, you can start this round then.
All right. So for me, my class, we went into like a lot of detail. We talked about the Latinx culture, and we like delved into like terms that we wouldn't even have to know, that our teacher taught us from when she went overseas to Spain to learn Spanish. But when during what's it called? At home learning, I didn't get that. So I was looking for other places to learn that information from, but I couldn't do that because I didn't know like the sources I was supposed to learn from and whether it be knowledgeable, if that makes sense. Rachel?
I think that definitely the content that I learned, it was still very helpful. I don't know that I could go in as much depth in my at-home learning as I could in the classroom. So I don't know if that's like a quality standard, but that definitely made it a different experience. I felt much more that we were kind of like skimming the surface than really getting like into it. So we had to like especially since they changed the formatting of the AP exam, we did have to drop a lot of the things that we had been kind of in the middle of. So like grammatic, like advanced grammatic structures and like different vocab. Like we were learning some new vocab in all of the units that we had reviewed. So I don't know if it was less quality, but it was definitely much less in like engaging in depth.
Mhm.
Maxie.
Right. So the quality, I think the quality of the teaching, because as long as the teacher is giving like sort of comprehensible input, so the students are like listening to the level of whatever language when the teacher talks, and then the students participate when like the teacher asks the question, they come up with the language. I think that was I mean, I think because it was kind of abrupt, the whole pandemic thing, it definitely this next quarter or whatever semester, if we optimize more for this type of like interaction instead of like learning vocab or something, then you can still increase the quality a little bit. But I think the main thing that kind of drops, but I mean, this is more quantity, but I think it's related with the quality, because since there's so much less, even like you can increase the quality a little bit, but I don't think you can quite get to the sort of quality with the more time that you had.
Hmm.
Layla, let me see. Oh, Layla,
Question
yeah,
was
Layla.
the quality of the spring semester, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So I definitely think that the quality, it was different than like regular learning. So like regular learning, we did vocab, we did like in-person talking, like in the language. But I definitely think, like in my personal opinion, learning like different cultures in the language that speak the language helps with your understanding. And so I think definitely like my teacher made it clear to like read books about certain continents, I mean countries that spoke the language, or different cultures and how they celebrate the language. So it really helped me like understand and put into perspective the importance of the language itself.
Great. So use 30 seconds. Now we're going to sum up this instruction part. So think about the advice you can provide to your teacher. Just 30 seconds. Teachers don't listen. So use 30 seconds. Provide us an advice. What would you like to see to change or to improve in our remote class instruction? Okay, let's start with Rachel.
I think that getting students more engaged was one of the very large problems that lots of teachers experienced when everything shut down. So I think above all, what would keep me engaged as a student, like I did my work and everything, but what keep me engaged in all of my classes is having a really large variety of what I would be learning. So alongside vocab and like grammar, but also like poems and songs and everything, just having that exposure, and also if there's any way to get more practice in with the teacher themselves and other students, that's something that's really valuable for language learners, I think, just to have more exposure to it, especially since we're all kind of like on our own in our houses right now. And I really think that both of those things combined could really make a more productive and efficient learning environment. Maxie.
Yeah, so that's what Lau says, really really good. But if I were a teacher, I would think about all the activities that we can do in the classroom, and then I would see which ones really need me to be there, and then which ones can like be put off. And because I'm pretty sure there's not going to be a great increase or anywhere close to as much as time we had before, I think I would really remove as much activities that are not essential to the teacher, so that you have a, like, even though there's less time, you can compress what you had used to be in 3 days with the teacher. Try to kind of like, even though it's not going to be the best, but try to keep what you can do with the students, keep that with the classroom time, and then the rest assigned to the students. Layla.
So like Rachel said, I think definitely interactive learning really helps the students. And like, I mean, I did all my work too, but like it was really hard for me to, finally get to it. I was like, maybe it's not that fun, but it was. Like, it turned out once it was interactive and I like enjoyed it, then I was willing to do the work more. So I think definitely like with a lot of kids, it's like if it's not fun, then they don't really want to do it. So I think definitely some advice is like keep your kids entertained. Well, I mean like, entertained in the way that they still learn, but keep it where they want to do the work. Oh, Spencer, sorry.
Adding on to Layla, I think the teachers should have a mix between in-depth information and like lessons, and also lessons that just like skim the top, so that we're able to get some variety in what we're learning, and also have content that makes us want to like continue to do our work, as well as like just get the bare minimum of information to where we stay focused.
Thank you very much. Now, our first brain break. Prepare your pen and paper. In 5 seconds, please write a name of a superhero. Who you think the specific power is the one you need the most to help you learn the language. A name of the superhero with a specific power. 5, 4, 3, 2. When I count to 1, everybody need to show your answer to the screen at the same time. Ready? 1. Show your answer. Ooh, can we see very well? Okay. Let's start with Maxime. Why is this person? What's the power you need? 30 seconds. Go.
Oh yeah. I don't think my person is actually a superhero. I didn't realize it's supposed to be an actual superhero, but it's Memory Man. And that would be, especially with Chinese, you got to know a lot of characters and words, so that would be really, really useful, Not an actual guy. Lila.
So I couldn't really remember the name, so I just put Wisdom. It's the guy from Marvel that's like super smart. Anyways, because I think, being like super intelligent, it helps you understand the language more, and like just, like knowing all the world history and stuff. So he did that, so I could use that. Spencer.
So I put Superman, which is interesting, but I guess his superpower that would be most helpful to me is to fly. So I'd be able to fly to like Spanish speaking countries and interact to learn the language more. Rachel?
I wrote down Wonder Woman mostly because she was my favorite and I couldn't think much, but I think she has like a variety of like superpowers, I guess, and she has her like cool lasso and the plane and everything, so like having a variety of tools and like strengths and being able to play off of those is something that I like feel like I should be able to use more in the classroom. So yep.
Yeah, we all need superpower to learn the language. That's what we just learned here. Okay, let's go to our next category, assessments. That's students' most favorite, right? So first question, in general, how do assessments serve your learning language? How does assessment help you, serve you, or maybe drag you back? I don't know. So what's assessment play? What's the role assessments play in your learning the language? We're going to start with Leila.
So assessments, I think they really help solidify the information that I learned from like the previous like topic or the assignment, because Well, I mean, I especially get really nervous during assessments, but after I'm done, I have all the information retained and it really helps. So, yeah, that's pretty much my answer. Spencer?
Assessments to me, they help measure comprehension. So through that, I believe like teachers are able to scale which students need help and which students like are pretty much able to help their classmates. Yeah, Rachel?
I think that one of the very beneficial things about assessments for me is that you're expected to strengthen your skills in a variety of different areas. So we had like tests where we would have to write an email, and tests where we'd have to write a story, and tests where we'd have to speak to somebody else and make a presentation. And so that really prepares you for like a diverse range of interactions that you could have. And I think that really, like Layla says, it really does solidify like using your language in different areas. Yeah, Maxine.
Yeah, I think in the classroom context, as far as like managing the students and the overall progress of everyone, I think assessment is kind of a hard kind of deadline, or like a time where everyone, like, they can learn whatever their own pace, but everyone needs to be like ready to move on after this assessment. So like if you're struggling on something like, say, vocab quiz, right? The teacher needs to have everyone know all the vocab. So then they would put an assessment so that for those who already know the vocab, they know it, so they don't need to do as much. But for those who are a little behind, they need to kind of like study the vocab so that they have it, so that everyone will be in the same aligned and ready to move.
Mm-hmm. So did your teacher change the format of the evaluations, the assessment in the remote class? How did it work? Did you change? Was there anything else, I mean, differently between face-to-face class and the remote class? Did the assessment change? And did it work for you? So we're going to start with Spencer this time.
All right, so for my class, the shift from in-person to online with assessments was pretty much the same. For my class, we'd have an assessment, we have an assessment mark the end of the unit. So by that point, all like retests and projects and other activities be due by that point, and that marked the end of that grade period. And if we weren't all there at the same time, then the teacher would sort of like go back and be like, okay, what's not working? What's wrong? So she was able to use that to measure our learning at home. Rachel?
For me, the assessments did change slightly. Again, I was preparing for an AP exam, and so we had the same test formatting from my freshman year of German up until my senior year of German, and then 2 weeks before the exam, they were like, guess what? The exam format is completely changing. And so that honestly, I don't think that went over very well with my class. We felt like we had just been thrown a curveball. But before we knew about the exam format changing, we did have altered test formats. So we couldn't obviously like talk to other students regularly and have that like recorded. So we did do recordings of ourselves, and we had written submissions that were graded or graded. We also didn't have grades, which was different. We had a pass-fail system. And so I would say that the test formats in like their outlines stayed the same, but not actually in like their content or the actual like depth of the test. It was very like surface level testing, just because you couldn't get to that like point with the students where everyone was at like in quarantine. So, Maxine.
Yeah, for testing, I believe we were almost done with our book. So I think we had one vocab quiz, which was like, everyone can do vocab quiz. But as far as other assessments, I don't believe we had any other assessments. And I think we probably could have, but I think because of the lack of time or like need, I think because we were really almost done. I don't know. I don't know how, but I think the assessments there wasn't really a change. Like, even if we were maybe having a like one-on-one assessment on like how speaking, that would be a bit difficult because there's so many students and there's not enough time. But I'm sure that if we like use the office hours and we give like appointments to everyone, that might work. But yeah, like Layla.
Like Maxime, I think because of the little time we had, we didn't really do assessments. So we read books in the language, and then we wrote down more, like to show our understanding to the teacher. We wrote down in Spanish like what we learned from the book, and blah blah blah. And so that helped. Like it wasn't in a test or
Good. Okay, we didn't hear the last part of your answer because of the internet freeze. So, maybe your last sentence. Can you say that again,
me.
Layla?
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't hear your last sentence.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that it really it wasn't like a test format, but it helped me with like knowing how to write things down in that language, just in case, for the future, it really helped.
Great. My next question could be applied to language classes, but not limited to. So I've heard students' reflection, teachers' experiences that it is very easy to cheat when you take an online assessment, quiz, or test. Do you agree? Do you agree it is easy to cheat? And let's think further how does that make you feel when you take an online quiz or test, knowing that someone else is probably cheating right now? How does that make you feel? So part one, do you agree it is easy to cheat, to take an online quiz test? And the part two is that how does that make you feel when you are still taking it, knowing someone is cheating? So we're going to start with Rachel.
I do agree. I think it is a lot easier to cheat online, especially since we're all at home. There's not somebody like there facilitating a test or an assessment. And this is just kind of something that I heard Maxime say earlier. He said that in his classroom, his teacher did try to do breakout rooms, but when the teacher wasn't there, the students wouldn't necessarily stay in the target language. I think that that's something that also like could apply to exams. For example, in my class, we would have exams where we'd have to talk to other people, but without the teacher being there listening to it, they might not necessarily catch that. And so I do think that there's a lot more, like students could be more able to cheat. Personally, that offends me because I do not like it when people cheat. I don't believe in it. I really strongly believe in academic integrity, and I don't believe that people should get an unfair advantage in like that kind of learning environment, especially since there's not a reason to cheat in a language class. Everyone gets the language differently, they understand it differently. So you just kind of have to meet your classmates and your teacher like where everybody's at. And so I don't really believe in that. And so that is definitely a downside to online learning. Maxine.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely easier to cheat when you have everything in front of you. Like cheating is it's not really if it's easy to cheat. When you're doing an exam, you have to remember your integrity. It's your academic integrity and everything you know. So when I'm taking a test that I know potentially others are cheating, I don't think I'm really affected, because I'm there. I'm just keeping my academic integrity. That's what matters to me. Plus, I'm doing my best. So that's it. I mean, if others are cheating, they're just it's not good for them in the long run. As far as being a good citizen, it's not good for their integrity. Layla.
Yeah, I definitely think, like everyone said, it's definitely easier to cheat. But I do think it kind of annoyed me knowing that, people that didn't cheat, like did like academic integrity, like they do what they have learned and they, do their best. And then people who have, like slacked off this whole entire year get to, go ahead. But I think it's definitely like a moral compass issue. It's like if you want to do better based on the things it'll help you more in the long run than it will like, just cheating? Spencer?
For me, I do believe like it's very easy to cheat online because you have the internet available to you, but also when you're cheating, you're setting yourself up for failure because tests and other assessments, they're measuring your ability. So if you cheat and you put all of the right answers, your teacher doesn't know what you know and what you do not know, so they're not able to help you properly. So it's pointless to be taking the test in the first place because you might as well just not take the test, fail it and get a 0 than get an 100 because either way, you're just, I don't know, it's interesting, but cheating it's not a good thing to do in the academic world.
Great. So let's have another related thing then. So again, you can apply to your language class, but not limited to. So from your spring experience, can you think about one assessment you received online and you felt very good about it? You say, wow, I think that's a good way to do the assessment online. I feel comfortable. I feel fair. I do not worry too much about it. And how did that apply? What kind of assessment that you received makes you feel so? I'm going to give you 15 seconds to think about that, to recall your spring experience. So give us one example which you will call, in your judgment, is a good online assessment. Okay, Maxime, you ready? Let's go.
Yeah. So in I think it was in my government class, the type of assessment where there's a task and you need to do it before a certain time. So like, say you need to write something, or actually it doesn't matter what it is, but what the purpose is that you make it the test so that you really have to like put your knowledge or like research or do something, and then there's a strict deadline. So you can't just like put it off or like spread it out throughout like hours and hours. The when time where you just need to do it, and like if you like the cheating is not really going to help you there. I think that was really effective. Layla.
Yeah, so like Maxime, I had a similar test. It was in Spanish, and you had to, of course, like answer the question, like what was the actual answer, and then you had to also explain how you got the answer. So, you had to put your knowledge to the test because it like helped, factor out like cheating. So you actually had to show your knowledge and like represent how it helped you with the test. Spencer?
I had a similar experience with Maxim and Layla. So my April history class, we have to do like DBQs where we take our knowledge and extra knowledge from like a book or something, and we create an essay based off of it. In like situations like that, you can't really cheat because there's not space to, because you have to give your opinion. And if you give an outside opinion that's not yours, then it's kind of like the clashing of ideas. So yeah. Rachel.
Just like everybody else, I do think that tests that are specifically performance-based, I guess like multiple choice is performance-based, but it's very objective. There's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. But the ones that really show like are really dependent on you as a person and like at your like level of ability, like those are the tests that I thought were really efficient. That for my German class, that was doing recordings. We would be given a prompt and we'd be told, okay, you have 2.5 minutes, answer this question, and we would have to make a recording of ourselves presenting. Of course, you can try and use like the dictionary or like other people's ideas, but for one thing, in German, using the dictionary, I'm sure this is the same in Chinese and Spanish too, it doesn't really translate like that. So, like, using one word doesn't really mean the exact same thing in both languages. So that's like one way that you can really kind of tell like where the person's at and if they're trying to use those other resources. Specifically in my calculus class, it's on a different kind of like route, I guess. We would have a free response that we would have to answer. And of course, that free response answer, there's only one correct answer to that calculus problem or like a correct set of answers. But we would have to submit our work in addition to it. So the teacher would like see the picture of the work and would be able to tell, oh, like these two people were working together or you did this by yourself. this is how you got to this answer. You didn't just look it up. So that was a really good way to like kind of foolproof like any cheating that could happen.
Great. So now we talk about how assessment can serve to our language learning. We talk about cheating. We probably touch base about certain kind of evaluation format. Again, in 30 seconds, when we come back to a remote class, given a piece of advice to your teacher, especially language teachers, about assessments. What a ideal or what kind of assessment you prefer, you think would actually help you better, more in a remote class? Okay, we're going to start with Layla.
Okay, I think a type of thing that will help me, show my knowledge and help me just in general is probably a one that you put your knowledge, like you have to show your knowledge, like we said earlier. It definitely helps. And like Spencer said, I had a couple of like DBQ type things for my science class and stuff like that. And so it really helped me, I still remember the knowledge that I learned from March. And it's really helpful and beneficial to, future like classes and the present class. So Spencer?
I think what would help, especially in languages, is you give an open-ended question, but you also give what units it has to be in between. So you're able to see what those students learn during that time and also measure if they're actually learning or if they're just, floating through the class, because learning at home is kind of difficult. And since we have access to the internet, we don't really learn that much. We just plug in the answers and submit it. So yeah. Rachel?
I think to bounce off what Spencer said, I do think that we should have any of our assessments, they should have like kind of a specific goal that we should be able to accomplish. And that can take on like a variety of different forms. It can be an email or a conversation or a presentation, but that it has to be very guided, much more so than we would have originally thought in class, because you don't have a teacher there saying, oh, this is the unit that we're in and this is how it works. Like you really do have to set kind of a very clear expectation. I want you to make this many minutes testing this knowledge that you have of this topic, and that'll make it a lot easier for students to see where they're at in certain areas, but also so teachers don't we don't want teachers to be like grading like blanks, like they should be able to still kind of like have a curriculum and a path that they can follow. And so I think having that kind of structured exam would really be helpful for both sides. Maxime?
Yeah, I have two comments. So the first one is to utilize the ability to have the strict deadline in order to see what truly the students are learning, to see where they are at, and maybe even making that assignment not even worth points, just so that you get that feedback. But the time is the main key here. And the second thing, which I know Rachel just said, was which was pretty cool, was the recording. That's pretty solid, because I don't know why we've never done that, but yeah, I think maybe trying that, I think that would be actually pretty nice activity for assessment. Yeah.
Wow, great. Thank you so much. So we're going to have another pause, brain break. So this time I want to ask you a question. You have to respond quickly. So in your language classroom, does it feel more like the Hunger Game or the Mission Impossible style in your learning? So wait a moment. If it's the Hunger Game, you do this. If it's the Mission Impossible, you do that. Okay, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to give me your answer by when I say 3. So again, the Hunger Game, and Mission Impossible. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Layla? Okay, great. We have 2. The Hunger Game, we have 2. Mission Impossible. All right. Let's start with Spencer. Spencer, yours is the Hunger Game.
Yeah.
Okay, why is it?
Well, in the Hunger Games, you know, like the best equipped wins and survives and goes on to the next round. So it's the same thing in the classroom. If you're best equipped and you know like the content, you grasp it easily and you like do everything you're responsible, you do everything you're supposed to do, then you're going to prevail, you're going to succeed in the class. So it just makes sense.
Good.
Rachel?
So I said Mission Impossible first because it's kind of a funny play on words, like learning a language can sometimes be impossible. But I think one of the really big things that the reason I didn't choose the Hunger Games is because from the very beginning, my German teachers, this could be because German isn't as popular a program where I'm from as Spanish. And so we generally have very small class sizes and very few classes with very small class sizes. So we all kind of got told from the very beginning, like, you're all going to be learning differently, so deal with it. Like, um, anybody who kind of came in with like other language experience, like generally they would be much better at like picking up on grammar structures and like different kinds of vocab, like, oh, this word sounds the same, versus like a student who's never spoken anything but English. So we were kind of told like, you know what, like you're not gonna like this isn't some sort of competition between you and somebody else. It's ultimately about you becoming proficient in this language that you're studying. So for us, it was much more like try and reach that like impossible goal in Mission Impossible than like a fight to the death like in Hunger Games. Maxie.
Yeah, I also agree with that. But especially, I mean, in my classroom, I don't think even from the first year, I don't think I've ever felt, maybe it's just a manner thing, but I don't think I've ever felt this sort of like fierce competition. I don't know what the competition would be. It's really just you know, collaborating and you know, learning the language together. But so the reason I chose Mission Impossible because in Mission Impossible there's the guy or whatever who's trying to, you know, in this case learn the language, and he's doing all these different things in order to you know, eventually get there. So that's kind of how I saw my classroom. We're all doing like these different activities or like, you know, talking and writing and all that, and then throughout the 4 years, and in the end we kind of achieve or, you know, we get closer to the goal. Yeah. Layla?
Yeah, so I chose Hunger Games. Like, I 100% agree with Spencer. It's like a, you know, a not fight to the death, but it's like those who are more equipped with the language, more experienced, tend to do better. Or if they don't, then, you know, like if there's others that are, they just like work hard, they're like generally better equipped to like handle the class and do better.
What a coincidence, our two Spanish students both chose that one. No comments, no comments. So move to our next one about feedback, okay? Okay, now, question number one is what kind of feedback you usually receive in a face-to-face class? What kind of feedback? Maybe it's just what kind of feedback do you usually receive? I would like to have this one that's focused on language class. What kind of feedback do you usually receive in your face-to-face class? We're going to start with Rachel.
So my teacher, she's really great at giving us feedback. That's something that she really tries to focus on. There is never an assignment that we turn in that doesn't get feedback. So of course, on all of our written assignments, she will make corrections, and then we have to go back and rewrite it the correct way for, you know, like that good retention. We also, if we're speaking, then we can ask her questions and she'll give us verbal feedback. But also, if we're making a presentation, she'll give us recommendations like, oh, try putting this here, or try like to keep your verbs connected or something like that. And then also when if we have any questions in class, regardless of the like content that we're learning, one of her favorite things to do is to go to the whiteboard and she'll draw things all over the board. She'll write out sentences and examples. And so that really like kind of puts our comprehension to the test, because she'll be like, okay, what kind of verb conjugation do you use here? But that's not only like she'll provide feedback, like where did you get this idea from? And we like will have that conversation as like a whole class with her, but we'll also get like, this is where you can improve, like based on the sentence, for example. So yeah, definitely lots of feedback in very many areas. Maxine.
Yeah, I also have basically actually pretty much matching what Rachel said. But so for especially when speaking, like when just randomly being called on, you say something, and then there's like this sort of what's the word, like nice kind of soft way of like correcting. So it's not just like you know, the correction. It would be like kind of more subtle, but you still understand that it's like if you said it incorrectly, but then you would like repeat the correct thing, you'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I think that's the main difference from, I mean, not really difference, but yeah. Layla.
Yeah, so my teacher also really helped with that. So we had a lot of score discussions, and we would, of course, speak in Spanish the whole time. And then for the next one, if we got something wrong, if we said something wrong, she would, like, of course, like write it on a note. And, it would help us like retain the information more. So then at the next one, we could, like use the conjugations correctly, or, like I don't know if they're verbs or whatever, but it helped a lot with the like speaking it like really well. Yeah, Spencer.
So for my teacher, she kind of like, if we made a mistake, she'd make an example out of us. So like if we made like an error when speaking to her for our assessments, she'd be like, okay, everybody stop. And she'd make everybody look at you and you repeat what you said. And she'd be like, okay, this is why this is wrong. Not to like make you feel bad or anything, but you put it this way, like this is the conjugation. This is how you use it in a sentence. And this is how you use it if you were like actually saying it to a Spanish speaker. So she gave us like examples so that we were able to speak it correctly and use it in our writing assessments and speaking assessments, or with like any other Spanish speaker.
Sounds good. So let's now think about our remote classes. That did your teacher change the frequency to provide feedback, or did your teacher change the format or the contents of the feedback during your remote class? So first one is, did the frequency changed? The second one is the contents of the feedback, did it change in your remote class in compared to your face-to-face class? 5 seconds, think about it. We're going to start with Maxime.
Yeah, I think so. The frequency definitely changed just because, you know, the time again, the amount of interaction that we had with the teacher, or for, you know, like for speaking, say, was very quite less, less frequent. But as far as the content, I think the content actually pretty much stayed the same, which I'm not sure. It might need to be changed, like thought more about how you can get more, like pack more feedback or more value into the same like correction session or feedback session. So yeah, I think that needs to be more thought about, especially with this less time. But yeah, I think the content didn't change, but I think it should. Layla.
So I agree with Maxime. I think like the frequency definitely changed just because we didn't have a lot of interaction, like as much as we did 5 days a week before. But I think the content didn't change because like my teacher definitely tried to like help us as much. Like every time she saw us, she tried to help us as much with, if we had any errors, like to help it so we could like grow from it. And like just in general, how writing, because especially we did a lot of writing during online, like that's especially important in the class I'm in. So helping like again with conjugations, that was one of the main things that she really helped with, and it helped me like today. So Spencer.
Our frequency for feedback, it did change, but that's because our assignments that we had for online weren't as writing oriented as our in-class assignments. So we had packets that she would assign us like writings to do and like essays, but we weren't able to do that like at home. So she wasn't able to give us as much feedback, but we did occasionally have some like things where we had to like send her an email in all Spanish, or like sing a song in Spanish for and she emails back. some feedback and like correct us. Rachel?
I think that the frequency of the feedback didn't necessarily change. Like, of course, my class was shorter, but in proportion, like, I was still getting feedback on every assignment. I think the content did change, but it only changed because the content of the actual assignments that I was doing was different. So if I wasn't doing something that was supposed to be focused on vocab and grammar, I wasn't getting feedback on specifically vocab and grammar. And again, that did have a lot to do with just where my class was and what we were preparing for. But I think that it was still like we did still get lots of valuable feedback, and that the quality wasn't any different. It was still all very helpful. On some things, I do think, like specifically assessments, it was much more difficult to give some comprehensive feedback because we had a very limited way to do it. It was like a recording or an essay, and we couldn't get like both of those like all the time. And we would when it was face to face, we would have weeks where it would be like, okay, you have this kind of test this day, and this kind of test this day, and this kind of test this day, and that's simulating like the breadths that you have to cover for like your examinations, and we couldn't really have that just based on the shorter class schedule. So it was different, but it was still like good quality feedback.
So this next one, just a reminder, because we only have 3 minutes left. So the last one that we don't have time to talk about it right now, but I would like for you to think about the less frequent feedback, or maybe a slight difference in the contents or the same contents, but with the shorter instruction time. Does all this put together, how does that make you feel to learn your language? Did you feel more achieved, less achieved? Any reason for you to feel so? We're not going to answer to this question right now, because I do have the last one is, how do you get extra help from your teacher online? How do you get extra help from your teacher online? All right, so we're going to start with Rachel. I'm sorry, Layla.
So if we didn't have, so we had office hours and of course like the regular class Zoom calls. But if I was not able to go to them, or if I just couldn't understand at all like what was happening, definitely email was like a savior for me. She definitely helped me over email a lot. If I ever had any questions, and she sent me like charts and things that I could.
I think you're cut out again.
Yes, we heard you tell that to use email. Seems like she couldn't hear us. Lack of communication.
Oh, can you not hear me again?
Yeah,
we heard you until you talk about sending an email to your teacher, and then after that we couldn't hear you.
My bad, my computer's being weird.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, so she used to just send me a bunch of like charts and things that would help me a lot. Did you hear that part yet?
Nope.
Oh, okay. And also she really kept my parents in the loop, like, which was really helpful. And especially because both my parents, my dad's from a Spanish speaking country and my mom's also Spanish. It really helps me, like she couldn't help me in the way that, she couldn't be in person. She would, reach out to my parents so they could help me. And that really was really beneficial. Spencer?
I could either reach out to my teacher via email and she'd send me a reply back within like 5 minutes, or she had office hours where I'd schedule a meeting for 15 minutes and go back, and she'd ask me what I had problems with and what wasn't working so that she could change it ahead of time for the other students. Rachel?
My teacher also had office hours. They were scheduled for the same time every week, so that was great. We used Google Classroom. That was our primary way to have class, like assignments would be posted there. So she had like a page, I guess, and it was just dedicated to where students could put comments. And so if anybody had a question, they could put it there. And then of course, like if we had an individual question, we could answer her. So she was really accessible the entire time. Maxine?
Yeah, I think my school also did a very good job with office hours. We had office hours every single day, so 5 times a week, between right before lunch. So I think that's pretty accessible. And of course, the teachers they're supposed to be there, and I mean my teacher was obviously, but so whenever I have a question or something, then you can go to office hours. It would be interesting to see because we actually didn't have that much like percentage of the year wise of the school year. We didn't actually have that much online, so it would be interesting to see next year how like I think I don't know. Actually, I don't know, but I feel like the office hours there wasn't too much attendance to the office hours. I don't know why. I feel like there might be more in this next coming year when we have a longer, well, I mean, hopefully not, but likely longer time online. It'll be interesting to see how that'll work. Yeah.
Great. I think the last one, we just provided our advice for how to get feedback and how to receive extra help from our teacher is a good suggestion for our remote class. And the time is 3:01. You know what? We finished all the prompts I prepared. We're a great team. We are very effective and efficient. Thank you so much. All of your input is so helpful. I'm sure it's so helpful to all the teachers. And have a great summer, the rest of it, and stay safe. I hope to see you next time. And
Okay.
before we go, would you please use the language you learned to say bye? And Spencer and Layla, you may need to use different ways to say that in Spanish. Okay, let's start with Spencer.
Adios.
Next, Rachel.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Maxim.
谢谢大家，再见。
Layla. That's different. It's different.
That's sign language.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I had a good time. Hope you have fun too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.